Hi, my name is Fran with the Prosperity Agenda, and welcome to Coaching Up Close, our mini webinar series designed to work some quick tips into your busy schedule to help you improve your coaching skills. But first, let me introduce TPA. We are working to end persistent poverty by changing the way that we think about, build programs for, and coach families under financial stress. Coaching is, of course, a big part of our DNA, and we are working with organizations all over the country on their coaching program. Before we jump in, if you are joining us live, we'll have a question and answer session at the end of this webinar, so save your questions. And as a note, please feel free to view this video and past Coaching Up Close videos with your colleagues and those interested in incorporating coaching into their work with families. Please visit our website, www.theprosperityagenda.org. And we also have a new one I'm going to throw in there, familycenteredcoaching.org, where you can register for these webinars and see all kinds of cool resources around coaching families who are experiencing financial stress. You can also find us on YouTube and our LinkedIn pages by simply searching the Prosperity Agenda. Now, let's get started. Today's session is about deepening racial equity through family-centered coaching. Family-centered coaching is a philosophy that respects the voices and experiences of the participants, and we must have a focus on racial equity. It doesn't matter how many approaches we come up with. It doesn't matter how much we coach. If we're not focusing on delivering services through a lens of racial equity, we're actually doing not only our family a disjustice, an injustice, but also our staff. So this week, we're going to discuss a case study on the topic with our partner, New Moms from Chicago, Illinois. So a special shout out to New Moms in Chicago, Illinois. They've been one of our long-standing partners, and we were able to learn 6 things. You know, I love a good number. We were able to identify with them 6 things, 6 steps that they took in order to deepen racial equity through family-centered coaching. I'll be sure to share the link of this case study in the description box below. Over the last 10 years, there has been a growing focus on practicing racial equity intentionally and systemically. Racial equity is defined as the conditions that would be achieved if one's racial identity no longer predicted in a statistical sense how one would fare in life. Wow. Racial equity is both a process and an outcome. It is important for us to recognize that not only is racial equity what we want to get to, but racial equity is also the process that we must follow in order to get there. The process works to eliminate policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages that reinforce differentiated outcomes by race or fails to eliminate them. So basically, what we're saying is, even if you are not actively perpetuating the policies, practices, attitudes, and cultural messages, if you are not actively working as an organization to help dismantle them, then you are not seeking the outcome of racial equity. Through the shared language and mindset of family-centered coaching, our partners are integrating a racial equity lens into their work with communities of color. The ultimate goal is to have racial equity become a metric of success across organizations that center families. Okay, so just like we measure our engagement outcomes, the same way that we measure our fundraising outcomes, we want to begin to also measure the metric of racial equity for the families that we center and serve. So we're going to jump right into it. These are 6 steps that our partner at New Moms took in order to shine a light on racial equity, not just in the service delivery, but also in the way that they were building genuine relationships with the participants. So here we go. Number 1, the first step is to create a shared language that centers the participant. It is to create a shared language that centers the participant. Shifting your language to be participant-centered is the first step, and some would say maybe even the most obvious step that an organization can take in deepening their racial equity work. So we do this by examining subtexts, biases, and implications behind the language that we use. This is questioning why we decided to use that word rather than that word. Okay. This may come across when we hear about our language choice and creating a shared language that centers on participants. We may be reminded of the word microaggression. Microaggressions are small things that are said that have a racial undertone to them, but sometimes people are saying them and they have no idea what's going on. And so rather than to assume that everyone knows what the latest language is and what's going on and what this person wants to hear and what this person wants to hear, as an organization, the first step that you can take is to create a shared language. New Moms did this by shifting away from using words like transformation in order to be more strengths-based in the words that they're using. When we use words like transformation, the person was prior to them meeting us was not enough. It wasn't enough. It wasn't good enough. There's an undertone that lies there. Okay. And so even examining at that what seemingly might be micro level begins to shift away from our biases, the language that we use that we're not even thinking about, and we begin to use more intentional language that centers on the strengths of the participant. Number two is to focus on racial diversity, equity, and inclusion through a dedicated group. It is not enough to talk about having equitable language. It's just not, okay? We know that people can say one thing and feel a completely different thing. We have to take it to a deeper level. And so being an equitable organization means committing to action-oriented a path toward more diverse, inclusive, and a just organization. Basically, what we're saying here is put your money where your mouth is. We know that in most organizations, our time is our money. And so if we dedicate time to this with a dedicated group, then we're likely to see more progress, not just in the way of building shared language and a shared understanding, but also in really making strides to examine and question whether or not our policies, practices, and mindsets as an organization align with our goal of the outcome of racial equity. Number three is to integrate equitable hiring and business practices. Okay, a shared goal to create a more diverse workplace is an important part of fostering equity. Advocate for people of color, especially women in new positions and in leadership. Alongside hiring, consider all of the touch points that your organization has and find steps and processes that support diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'm just going to take another step here and say, if you are not sure how to go about doing this in a way that aligns with federal and state guidelines for hiring, it is also a great time to say, put your money where your mouth is and hire a consultant. Bring in some help to get an understanding about how you can diversify your workplace, diversify your staff, diversify the consultants that you're working with, the people that are in the room who are having conversations about the families to be served. Okay. And so you have to integrate equitable hiring and business practices into your work. Okay. One of my favorite sayings is the way you do one thing is the way that you do everything. If you are not equitable in your hiring processes, more than likely you're not equitable in your business practices. You're not equitable in the way that you serve families. You're not equitable in the way that you support your current staff. And so it starts with how are we hiring and how are we doing business? And so it's not just about the person who comes in the door and saying, well, I want you to feel that you are creative, capable, and resourceful while you're here working with me, while also ignoring the conditions that we create for the people that work in our organization with us. Okay, number 4, build on FCC with more training and expertise. Family-centered coaching is a service delivery mechanism. It is the way that you provide whatever your service is within your organization. And so it's important as we're focusing on deepening our racial equity that we find additional trainings that will support that. There are complementary trainings and tools that are available. One of my favorite websites is racialequitytools.org is one of my favorite websites. It has all kinds of curricula and evaluations and plans and all kinds of stuff, it is important that you not only have your training around family-centered coaching and that you understand what it means to have a coaching mindset, but you have to be intentional about having additional trainings around trauma-informed care, implicit bias, and even strengthening your practice in having coaching conversations and using reflective listening. Okay. Explore, number 5, explore conversations about race and privilege. Having uncomfortable and complex conversations may be necessary to adopt more equitable strategies, okay? This is, again, another one of those put your money where your mouth is. Uncomfortable conversations that are facilitated in the proper way can be used to grow your sensitivity, understanding, empathy, mutual understanding, listening, accountability, and growth. These are all skills of a great coach, but again, it must start internally first. It must start within our building. And so we have to begin to be bold about how we explore conversations about race and privilege, even within our own teams and inside of our own buildings, inside of our own organizations. And so again, I want to recommend, if you do not feel comfortable, if there's no one on your staff that feels comfortable leading those conversations, I really implore you to reach out and find a consultant or someone who can help lead your organization through having those conversations. Look for professional development that will support you in holding those uncomfortable conversations in a way that is safe and also brave for those that are participating in the conversation. I just want to delineate right there really quick. A safe space is a space where everyone feels safe, and we are going to do everything we can to maintain that, even if it means we don't really touch the things that don't feel so great. A brave space says, we are going to be cognizant of the safety of those around us, but we are going to be brave enough to speak up and say the things that may not necessarily be comfortable or may not necessarily make us feel the most excited to say. Anybody ever been in one of those meetings where you're just like, I really need to say this thing, but I don't know how to do it? Well, having a brave space would allow the person who's kind of having that struggle to speak up and to speak out about what they have to share. And also that it will be received in the spirit in which it was delivered. Okay, but again, if you don't feel comfortable with that, please reach out and get some help, get some support. There's never anything wrong with getting some support in order to move something forward. Okay, number 6, the last one, and this is what I would say is probably one of the most important things. Okay, everybody ready? Number 6 is don't give up. Don't give up. I'm just going to be really frank right now. Okay. We did not get into this overnight, and I guarantee you we won't get out of it overnight. Okay. These systems weren't created overnight, and I guarantee you that even in your career span, we won't see the end of them. But what we can do, even in this non-linear, messy process, is be committed to dialogue. We can be committed to iterating upon the progress that we've made for the sake of continuous improvement. Okay, the outcome of an equitable community approach and relationship is far greater than the discomfort that we might feel as we're going through it. So even if you don't see any change, there's no uptick in engagement, we can't really capture it in a metric that we can understand. Just know that your commitment to doing the work every day is making a monumental impact on the way that families are being served, not just in your community, but it's also raising the standard of what is expected in human services. We are appreciative to New Moms for helping us better understand how organizations can deepen their racial equity lens through FCC. We are inviting you all to reflect on these suggestions and consider how you can be a part of creating a collaborative, trusting, and non-judgmental environment for families to set and achieve their goals. Remember that there is not a one-size-fits-all in coaching, nor in the pursuit of racial equity. So you have to be curious and you have to be patient. And your team, as you're working together, will identify ways that work for both you and, and for the families that you serve. That's it for today. Thank you for watching. Join us next month as we give you more coaching tips and resources. And please be sure to stick around for the question and answer portion. And of course, if you have questions about our coaching training program, or if you'd like to sign up for the next Coaching Up Close mini webinar, visit us at theprosperityagenda.org and check out our LinkedIn page. That's it, everyone. We'll see you in January. Bye. All right. Yes, the website I mentioned earlier is racialequitytools.org. I'll actually drop that link in the chat box. Lots of great information on there. They created it so that we could use it, and I love to use it. So thank you for that. Can I get the 6 steps you just mentioned, please? Absolutely. Let's run through them again really quick because I did talk really fast. The first thing is to create shared language that centers the participant, okay? Create shared language that centers the participant and not the program. That's my Fran spice I want to add on it. When we center our language around the program, it takes into consideration not at all the experience of the person, the human being that is sitting right in front of us. And so we have to center on using shared language. Okay, language that everyone understands, not just us because we understand the jargon of our program, but we have to have a shared language that centers the participant and not the program. All right. Sorry. Number 2 is to focus on the racial diversity, equity, and inclusion through a dedicated group. All right. So we want to focus by having a group of people who are intentionally working on this. It's not good enough to just have water cooler talk. That's not going to get it done. Okay. It might help for a little bit to relieve whatever angst you might have or to vent. But if you want to make progress, you need to have a dedicated group whose focus is to gain understanding and then figure out how it can be implemented within our organization. This is where you got to put your money where your mouth is. Okay. The number 3 is to integrate equitable hiring and business practices. Again, if you do not have a dedicated or an HR department that is working on this, I would suggest you bring in outside help to help you think about and review your hiring practices and your business practices. Number 4 is to build on FCC with more training and expertise, okay? You all know that I don't believe that training in and of itself actually equates to change, but what does is repetition, okay? We cannot believe that if we expose our staff to something one time in one training, it means that they'll magically never be the same. Sometimes that happens. Sometimes it happens that way. But more times than not, folks need a constant stream of more information, new ways to think about things, places to reflect, okay, and to process what's going on. And so you have to build on family-centered coaching with more training, trainings around trauma-informed care, implicit bias, and even strengthening your own practice and confidence in your coaching abilities. Number 5 is to explore conversations about race and privilege. This is a big one. Again, if you do not feel that there's someone inside of your organization that can help you do that, bring in outside help. There's never anything wrong with bringing in outside help. And if for nothing else, you have someone who is a neutral party, okay? Someone who can be objective for the most part about the conversation. And so you want to begin to explore conversations about race and privilege, because what you do not acknowledge will grow within your organization, because the conversations are happening, right? The conversations are happening. How are we helping to insert the view of the family? How are we helping to integrate this into our work? And then the number 6 is don't give up. We can't get it done if you give up. We'll never get it done if you give up. And so as messy as it gets, as crazy as it gets, as, impossible as it might seem, don't give up, okay? Don't give up. So those are the 6. Thank you for that question. I know I ran through them pretty fast. Let me see here. Yes, I love Isabel Wilkerson. That book is great. I read The Great Migration. I hadn't read Caste yet, but that is a great book. Thank you for sharing it. In my experience, let's see, we have someone, Tammy, that said, in my experience, there is a gap between white leadership thinking they are practicing racial equity and how their actions are experienced by Black people in the organization. How do you bridge this divide? Oh, my Tammy, I don't know that I can answer that question so quickly on this call. But again, what I would say is we have to start where we are, and that is to have a conversation. That is to come to the table and say, I'm going to give you the benefit of believing that you want to enter this conversation to understand and not necessarily just to be understood. And so it all starts with the conversation. Again, if you do not feel comfortable having that conversation, there's no one in the organization that can facilitate that. Ask if it's possible for you all to have an outside person come in and take you all through some type of workshop or seminar, guided conversation. Thank you for that question. It's a really big question. I know that probably wasn't the most efficient answer, but I hope it helps. Let's see. Gail says, when I speak in public, I have stated that we no longer are transitional, but transformational. What term should I use instead? You know, this transactional versus transformational, it's about the context that you create around the language. Okay, if I walk into a meeting with my participant and I say, I am here to be transformative in your life, excuse me, why would you assume that I need to be transformed? You're assuming that I don't like my life as it stands. But when you say we are here to no longer focus on being transactional, but we want to be transformational in what? Okay. It is about how you provide context around that language. Okay. It is about the sub language it is what happens in between the lines that we have to account for. And I know that might seem like a heavy pull at first, but that's the system that we live in. Well, Fran, I just said transformational. Why do I have to clarify that? Because you do. Because that's the name of the game. If you want to be a part of the dismantling of a particular system. Yes, I love this conversation in the chat box. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, Darlene, I will find out what's going on with the videos on YouTube. We'll follow up with that. Thank you for that. How can we continue this work while COVID is still running rampant? How do you coach from a distance? Jolene, I believe it is Jolene. Many of our partners are really leaning into a virtual style of coaching. The majority of our tools are now virtual. You can use them online. All of our tools that we would normally print out, they're PDF. You can type right into them. You can share your screen. There are several things that we can do to continue our coaching, even as we're still going through this pandemic or whatever is going on right now. I don't know how to describe it, but you're right. We're still kind of in this there, but not really there kind of thing. And so in coaching, I would say that the number one focus, even if you never pull out a tool, is to maintain the relationship. Okay. In coaching, we recognize that people are in one or two states. Of course, there are many more states, but as far as coaching, there's either ready for change or not ready for change. Okay. Ready for change says, I am in a place mentally, physically, and emotionally where I can take on making a change in my life. Not ready for change doesn't mean they don't want change. Not ready for change just means, hey, right now, I can't take on anything else because I need to focus on stability. Everyone's been there, right? Everyone's been there where you're like, if one more thing happens, I'm gonna scream. Okay. And so in coaching, it's an uncomfortable place to be in right now, but coaching can continue as long as you continue the relationship. Okay. Coaching can continue as long as you continue the relationship. So keep the relationship alive. Okay. We manage cases and we have relationships with people. We manage cases and we have relationships with people. We do not case manage people. We do not case manage people. Okay, I hope that was helpful. All right, we got one more comment. Some of our coaches actually feel that it is easier to have participants in the driver's seat when they are in their own home instead of sitting in our offices. Thank you so much, Mary, for sharing that. Mary is one of our longtime partners, our partners out in Flint, Michigan. They've been practicing this at GST Michigan Works for several years. And I am glad to hear that coaches are feeling like families are more comfortable in their home, that they have authority in their home. They feel a greater sense of agency as they're sitting in their living room or at their kitchen table having conversations about their future. It's a much different situation than when I'm sitting in your office and I have to present as something. So thank you for sharing that, Mary. Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Michelle. Michelle also adds, sometimes Zoom feels safer and people may be more comfortable to share. Absolutely. One thing that I always say in coaching, especially in this time, is if you don't have a pair of AirPods or wired headphones that you can put on, one of the first things I say is, hey, we're about to go into a coaching session. I just want you to know that I have my headphones with me in case you want me to put those on. Sometimes I already have them on. I just point it out to them, because whatever you share between you and I is still just between you and I. Okay, just making sure that you do those little things to protect the space so that when they do open up and share with you, they can do that feeling comfortable, even though we're not in an office. All right, I think that's it, everyone. Does anyone else have any questions before we end our call? Thank you, Tammy. Thank you so much. We will see you all in January. If I don't have an opportunity to speak with you, if I don't get an opportunity to send an email to you before we end out 2021, Happy New Year, everyone. And I wish you nothing but success, happiness, and joy in the upcoming year. I hope that you enjoy your time and some fellowship with the people that you love in this special time. Until next year, we'll see you. Thanks, everyone. Bye.